right, mathematicians. So our last lesson for this unit on number sense is operations with decimals. So we're going to go through adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, a little bit with percents. I'm going to have you do some problems on the left side, and then you should have all the skills you need to do the practice problems. Now the practice problems combine operations with decimals with, if we flip back here, your operations with integers, which is your order of operations. So it's going back to these type of problems here, but now you're going to be doing it with decimals. So you're still following the same steps, but now you have decimals to use. And we're going to go through how to work with those negative decimals and dividing with negative decimals. So if you want to pause so you can write down the example problems, go ahead. So for number one, we have negative 4.52 plus 3.26. So we're adding, but we have opposite signs. So that means we are really taking the difference, right? We're subtracting them, and we're taking the sign of the bigger number. So if we look here, 3.2 starts with a 3. This one starts with a 4. So this is the bigger number. Yes, it's negative 4.52. So in the grand scheme of things, it's smaller. But when we think about greatest, which one's bigger, we think about the absolute value in this case, right? So this one's bigger. So what we're going to do is line up the decimal points. That's kind of the big step here. And since we're taking the difference, what we're really doing is, and I'll do this in blue, $4.52, since that's technically the larger number, and we're subtracting 3.26. Remember, you always got to line up the decimal point because we are adding and subtracting with the place values, which is what you should have seen in the video. We have to make sure that when we take things away or we add things to, we're adding them to the same place value. So let's keep going with this example here. 6, you can't take 6 away from 2, so we're going to have to borrow. That becomes a 4. This becomes a 12. Taking 6 away from 12 gives you 6. You can take 2 away from 4, that gives you 2. Bring down the decimal, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So the answer is, and this is really important, because your larger number was negative, this is a negative, right? 1.26. So the answer is negative 1.26. Let's take a look at this one now. Negative 7.4 minus 5.8. So when we are subtracting, really, remember there's no such thing as subtracting when we have numbers. We're just adding. So we change this to addition. So this is really negative 7.4 plus, and we take the sign of the opposite, right? We take the opposite sign, so plus negative 5.18. We use the additive inverse. That's the word I was trying to get out. So now we're adding, and we're adding with the same signs. Right here we have different signs, we really have to subtract, take the difference. And now we have the same signs. So again, the big key for this one is you got to line up the decimal points again. Okay, and they have the same sign. So we're going to be adding these two numbers together, right? Their same sign is negative. So now we're going to line up those decimals. So we've got 7.4 and 5.18. Now, this should look funny, right? Because we want to have numbers in all the place values so that they all match up. Right now, this is 7.4, and then it's blank. This is 5.18. So this one goes all the way to the hundredths, and this one only goes to the tenths. So we want to put in a 0 as a placeholder. And again, we're adding now. 0 plus 8 is 8. 4 plus 1 is 5. Bring down the decimal point. 7 plus 5 is 12. And since they had the same sign, that sign was negative, the answer is going to be negative 12.58. Now that you have both of those done, on the left side, you're going to do these two problems. 2.35 plus negative 6.13 and negative 8.6 minus 3.27. And now we're going to work with multiplying and dividing. So we have number 3 here. We're multiplying 6.72 times negative 0.4. So when we multiply, we actually don't have to line up the decimals. What we end up doing is we count the decimal places. And I'll show you how we set that up. So let's line this up like traditional multiplication. The larger number is going to go on top. That's 6.72. And we understand that this is negative, but we're really just working with the numbers here. 0.4. And we're just multiplying. And so just like we would normally do, right? 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 7 is 28. So I bring down the 8, carry the 2. 4 times 6 is 24, plus the 2 is 26. Now this is 0. If this was like a 2, I would keep going, but in this case, right, I can drop down to 0, and then 0 times 2, 0 times 7, 0 times 6, right? So this is going to be 2688. I'll write that better. Okay, now when we multiply with decimals, we are counting the decimal points, or the decimal places. Okay, for example, this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so my answer is going to be 3 spots away, which means this really turns into 2.688. Okay, because I have 3 decimal places, 3 place values to the right, I have to move my decimal point 3 spaces to the left. So now that you have 2.688 as your answer, and we've moved the decimal place, we have to take into account that we had a positive number times a negative number, right? So this results in a negative 2.688. So number 4, we're doing 6% of 530. So this one's kind of tricky because you have to think about what 6% represents as a decimal value. So one way to think about that is when you have 6%, 6% as a fraction, what I do is I kind of think of this 6 as my numerator, this bar here as my fraction bar, and then I have 2 zeros. So this is really 6 over 100. And 6 over 100, or 6/100ths, is 0.06. So the problem we're really solving here is 0.06, and of means times 530. Okay, so it's important to connect these two words together. So now we're going to move on and set up this multiplication the same way we set up that one. So that's 530 times 0.06. And so 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 3 is 18. Bring down the 8, carry the 1. 6 times 5 is 30. Plus the 1 is 31. And again, we are counting, right, the decimal places. So we have 1, 2, and 0, right? There's no decimal here. So I bring it over to here, and my final answer is 31.8, or you could say 0.80. It doesn't matter which one. Okay, now we have one more to do. And this one is division. So we're taking negative 24.18 and we're dividing it by 2.6. So here are the steps for division. We're first going to set it up as a traditional division problem. Right, we're taking 24.18 okay, and we are dividing that by 2.6. Okay, and don't worry about the negative here. We're just going to work with the numbers for now, just like we did with the third one here. Okay, so I don't want to have a decimal point inside my divisor here. Okay, so I want to move this one over to the right so that it doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to move this over one so it's there. And if I do that, I have to do that to this point as well. So this really now becomes 26. And on the inside, 241.8. So we shifted the decimal places over, okay, so that there was no decimal left inside. So now that I have the decimal point where I want it, I'm going to move it up top. Okay. And now we just have regular division. So can 26 go into 2? No, it cannot. So we're going to put a little X there to show that it can't. Can 26 go into 24? No, it cannot. So I'll put another X mark. Okay. Now putting these X marks here, that just kind of shows me that I can't put anything in those place values. So I don't, everything still lines up. Okay. Now, can I put 26 into 241? And yes, I can. So what's kind of difficult about long division is you kind of have to think about, well, how many times can 26 go into 241? It's going to be more than once, right? Probably more than twice. You know that 4 times 25 is going to be 100. So 4 times 26 would be 104, because you have another 4. 26 times 10, if you were to do that, you're just adding a 0, so that'd be 260. which is pretty close. Let's try 9. So 26 times 9 would be 234. So it goes in 9 times. We have 234. We subtract those. Can't take 4 away from 1, so we borrow. That becomes a 3. This becomes a 1. And we have 7. And we're going to bring down the 8. And again, we're not going to worry about the decimal point because we already have it up here. So now we want to figure out how many times 26 goes into 78. So it actually goes in 3 times. 3 times 20 would be 60, and 3 times 6 would be 18. When we put those together, we get exactly 78. So we take away 78, we get 0. So the answer to this one is 9.3. And so we did all this work, but we also want to remember, just like before, we've got a negative divided by a positive. That's going to result in a negative number. So we have to make sure we show that the answer isn't just 9.3, but negative 9.3. Okay, so when you're working a lot in 7th grade now, you're going to have to be mindful of those negative and positive integer rules. So we're going to be going through them every day. Okay, so kind of the big steps for this one, and I'm going to move this because I didn't really make enough room over here on my book, but I want you to be able to write down these steps. Okay, is that you first have to write it in standard form. Okay, then you move the decimal point in the divisor and the dividend. To the right. Okay, so that we get rid of the decimal here because we don't want a decimal. Right, we don't want a decimal. Point here. Okay, and then we divide as normal. And we rewrite the decimal point above inside our answer. Okay, so you're going to finish these 3 problems on the left side of your page. Negative 37 times negative 9.2. Find 8% of 230. And negative 21.7 divided by 0.7. And when you've got all 5 of those done, you can go to your teacher and have them check your answer to make sure you're ready to move on to the next section.